Hello and welcome to Hive Live, where we bring you all the build-up to today's 3 o'clock kickoff as Watford travel to Carrow Road to take on Norwich City. The Hornets looking to register their second win of the Premier League season after that opening day victory against Aston Villa. But the omens are good for this afternoon. Norwich have lost each of their last 4 league meetings with Watford, with both of those meetings in the Championship last season, finishing 1-0 to the Hornets. Daniel Farke's side have lost each of their last 14 Premier League games, scoring just twice and conceding 35 goals in that run. It's Norwich City versus Watford, and for the next 45 minutes, build-up is free to view for all Watford fans right here on the home of your match day, Hive Live. Afternoon, welcome along to Hive Live. Great to have your company with us today as we build up to the Premier League action this afternoon at 3 o'clock with the Hornets taking on Norwich City. Joining us as ever here on Hive Live, another Watford legend, the one and only Mr. Tommy Mooney. Tommy, how are you doing?
Very well, good afternoon, nice to see you back.
Yeah, and you, good to see you. We're going to look more depth into this game very shortly, but a great opportunity this afternoon to get another 3 points on the board.
Yeah, I think it is when the fixtures come out and you look at Norwich away, perhaps because they're newly promoted too, I think it's one of those where you think, that's a big game for us, we need to take 3 points, and it's come around. We managed to pick 3 up against Aston Villa, but not since then, so it makes it a big game today.
Yeah, let's kick things off. Let's talk about Wolves, that game last weekend, of course. Disappointing, I guess, but an assessment of the performance from you for that Wolves game?
Disappointing result, definitely. I thought they were there for the taking. Wolves in the second half, the beginning of the second half, I thought we took the game to them. We just couldn't have that little bit extra that you need in the final third where we create a chance and we'll put it in the back of the net. We didn't have that. So ultimately Wolves got themselves back in the game and scored 2 good goals. So I think, in fairness, Wolves deserved the 3 points. Looking at the bigger picture, but nevertheless, it's a week later and we go again.
Obviously, a few games into the Premier League now, and that transition from playing Championship football to Premier League football is massive for the club, for the players, and all the individuals involved. Obviously, 4 games in now with that game last weekend. Individual-wise, out on the pitch, players, anyone starting to really kind of show some good bits of promise from you, especially some of the newer guys that have come in?
Yeah, I think last week in particular, I thought Danny Rose is showing that he's coming back to fitness, and he has been a top player. He's just gone a long time without playing football, so a couple of games on the trot will work for him fitness-wise. You don't become a poor player overnight, so that's not going to change. So I'd be expectant from him, and then obviously because we started so well with Dennis and Sarr with goals on the opening day, you just want them a little bit more from them. And I think probably all around the pitch, you just need a little bit more from the players to step it up and to go up that next level.
Obviously in that final third as well, unable to get ourselves on the score sheet. Would you put that more down to the way Wolves set up, or were we just lacking a little bit in that final third last week?
I think probably the lads will be disappointed that they never created more chances. There wasn't too many efforts at goal, and the ones that weren't on target. So that's something that needs to change, and it needs to change quickly, ideally today, because Norwich are very similar in that format. But we know that's the hardest part of the game, is putting it in the back of the net. So, we can look steady at times, we can be comfortable in possession, but if you're not creating opportunities to score, you're minimising your chances of winning games.
No, completely. And obviously, you told Emma last week as well that you kind of thought it was an opportunity missed. But you look at those kind of games that we've had since that Villa game. Tottenham was another one. We were kind of unlucky, really. That it's disappointing not to have more points on the board so far, but it's not the end of the world.
I would say that the Tottenham away performance was a good level to set. Away from home against, at the time top of the Premier League, hadn't conceded any goals. I thought it was an impressive performance. We just didn't have that last little bit of creativity in the final third that we've mentioned already. Very different to the Brighton game. I think that was a poor performance, everybody would agree. Spells of the game against Wolves, we were very, very good. We just couldn't get over that final hurdle of putting the ball in the net.
Now we've got some great opportunities coming forward because we've got 3 games on the bounce now where you can see some real points and some victories. Of course, we're away today, but then we've got the Carabao Cup midweek, and then it's Newcastle here a week today on the 25th of September. 3 games there where you can really see potential of picking up points, and also it's nice to get a cup victory in the bag and move through to a second round of a cup competition.
I think from a player's perspective, it's a week of optimism because you go away to Norwich. We know all about Carrow Road. A lot of the players have won there last season. Then you've got a good cup game in Stoke because it's at home. Stoke are doing very, very well in the Championship, but a home game in the cup is all you can ask for. And then Newcastle, turbulence follows Newcastle around wherever it is. They had a good result against Leeds to a certain extent, but yes, certainly I would look at it as a objectively a good week for us, but we need to start that well and get it off to a good start today.
Yeah, and some home games as well. It'd be great to have you guys all back in the stadium as well with us for those, which is a massive help this season, isn't it? Having fans back is going to be important for those games as well.
Huge. I'd said many times last year, I tip my hat to all of the players that achieve promotion with empty stadiums, because there's no momentum without a crowd. And certainly in the Aston Villa game, the atmosphere was as good as I've heard at Vicarage Road, albeit a long time since I played on it, but the first game back in the Premier League, and the atmosphere and the performance. Don't think it's not a coincidence that the atmosphere and the performance go hand in hand. So certainly be different today, but we do know that the Watford supporters on their travels make an awful lot of noise. So hopefully they can push them again today.
Yeah, massively. If you're watching this on your way to the game this afternoon, make sure you get behind the lads inside the ground. As Tommy said, that atmosphere is absolutely vital. And thanks for joining us if you are watching on your way up, and if you're watching just in general for the build-up to and you can't make it to the game, we've got lots of stuff coming up for you between now and 1:15. So plenty of time to join us here on Hive Live today. Right, let's dig a bit more into this game then. Norwich City today, a team we know well. Does that sometimes make it easier, or does that make it difficult? Of course, those 2 1-0 victories for us last year, a good 6 points. Can that be an advantage, or sometimes can it be a bit of a disadvantage as a player because you think, we've done these before, it'll be all right?
I don't think so. Not as a player, you have to take the positives out of it. We had 2 good performances against them last season, but that was in the Championship, and they went on to win the Championship. And for me, and I said it many times last season, they had the best starting 11. They didn't have a squad as strong as ours. So when they struggled with injuries or suspensions, maybe their results swayed a little bit, whereas we carried on going, particularly at home. So I can understand why people might think that, but I would see it as get on the front foot, really get at them away from home. And essentially we're a counter-attacking team. That's the way that we're set up. So Norwich will have possession. They had almost 50% possession against Arsenal last week. We know they'll have possession. That sets up for our pace and energy, providing we do it from the first whistle.
Yeah, completely. Of course, the first game for Xisco in charge in December was, of course, Norwich as well. So we got his first 3 points against these guys as well. So from a manager's perspective, I guess he's kind of got a bit of a gauge on what they're like. So he had a bit of success against them in that first game, which is obviously useful for him. A bit of knowledge and a good memory, and a good memory for the fans as well of that first game.
Well, I think perhaps the analysis team will have watched more of Norwich than they would have any of the other Premier League teams, with the exception of Brentford. So they'll know certainly all about it. And I don't think Daniel Farke's, whether he's been in the Championship or the Premier League, his philosophy doesn't change. So I don't envisage it being too different a game from it last season's in the Championship. Like I say, they'll have that possession. They're comfortable with it. They'll attack quickly, and they've got Pukki as their main striker if he's in the side today, who is a constant goal threat.
Yeah, completely. They obviously, you mentioned, won the Championship last year. They're tipped for relegation in the Premier League this year, which is quite interesting. When you sometimes see teams go up, it's like they have a good bounce. When Bournemouth went into the Premier League, of course, they had a good start. And obviously that promotion, it's interesting, isn't it, as a team that goes up. And you look at Norwich, they went up, they came down. Like we didn't. We've both gone back up together again. But it's interesting with Norwich. Do you think that is down to the fact, like you've already mentioned, that their team is a team, not necessarily a squad, and it just hasn't got that depth to compete with Premier League football?
I think that shows you the huge gulf in the difference between the Premier League as a global business and the Championship as a really good league to watch, because it's so difficult coming up against hardened Premier League players. The Championship is made up of players that have played in the Premier League and young players trying to prove a point. So when you give the ball away in the Premier League, it's a while before you get it back. When you do it in the Championship, you can win it back within a minute. So those are the huge gulfs in difference between the two leagues. And I think sometimes it's better to get on the front foot and just see what you can do to the opposition, and hopefully we'll do that today.
Yeah, of course, we're looking at this as a real opportunity for us. You know, we look at this side going, right, it's a real chance for 3 points today. But of course, Norwich will be looking the same for us and going, right, we played these last year. We know them well, like they know us well. They've had a real tough start to the season. They've lost to Liverpool, City, Leicester, Arsenal. They're going to have a point to prove today, aren't they? They themselves need to get some points on the board quick.
Well, again, when you look at the fixtures, that'll be what Norwich players, staff, supporters will look at, because you could argue before Arsenal's bad start that their first 4 games are Europa or European competition qualifiers from the last couple of years. So yeah, I think on paper their start's been more difficult than ours, but everybody has to play everybody else twice. So it doesn't matter whether you play them in a window, out of a window, at the beginning, the middle or the end. You still have to come across that opposition and hopefully overcome them.
So a win for Watford today will mean that Norwich become just the 5th team to lose their first 5 games in the Premier League. So fingers crossed. Not that we want to wish a bad start on another team. We want the points today. Let's have a chat about some of their danger players. Obviously, you have to mention Teemu Pukki.
Yeah, I think 26 goals in the Championship last season. A lot of goals in the Championship prior to their promotion the last time they were in the Premier League. He's one of those where almost the Premier League, well, I suppose it's easy. For me personally, the Premier League was too much, and at times the Championship was easy. Pukki scored some goals in the Premier League, but certainly not as many as he has in the Championship. But he is a constant goal threat, and you know, at the end of the day, games are won because of the goals that you score, and he'll be a threat, as well as, you know, other players in and around him. And the way that they play, they have a lot of players that score goals too. It's not just Pukki. It's not a one-man team. The amount of possession that they have. Obviously, they lost Buendia going to Aston Villa, and they're still trying to find that link to play in and around Pukki. So hopefully that takes them another couple of weeks and we don't get the backlash of it.
Yeah, okay. Quiz question for you now. Teemu Pukki, he's played against us 4 times. How many goals has he scored in those 4 games against us?
Well, he definitely didn't score last season because they were 1-0. Yeah. So process of elimination. Premier League before that, he scored, I think, 11 Premier League goals in 30 odd games. So I'd say 0.
The correct answer. You've seen these notes, haven't you?
No, I haven't. I've just researched Pukki. I researched Pukki, so I was process of elimination. I was thinking he's only scored 11 Premier League goals. Were they against us?
Yeah, literally in his English playing career, he's faced Watford more times without scoring than any other side, 4 games, and he's also lost all 4 of those games as well. So that's a nice little stat for a good goal scorer of the opposition today. We'll take that all day long.
Yeah, absolutely. May that continue many more times.
Did you ever have sides that you just couldn't score against, and did it become a thing? Because you sometimes see those stats, don't you? Oh, they've never scored against this team, but they've scored against everyone else.
Fortunately, I lived in an era and played in an era that the stats weren't as open as they are now. So there's probably lots of teams that if we'd had the analysis that we have now, I would have been worried about going into the game. But no, I think during my time, you just think, you want as many chances as you can get in a game, and hopefully you'll take 1 or 2 of them.
You used to score every game, didn't you? That was it, really. That was the real answer to the question. You used to score lots. Right, let's have a look at their coach, Daniel Farke. His style of a play, kind of, what's he like to play against, do you think, for opposition? Is it difficult to set up against him?
I think they're very well drilled. You know, people talk about the goals that they score in the Championship, but they're also very strong and stable at the back, and they build from a base. And you can see it on the training ground is where you get that stability. You know, and the style of play that they have, they're very, very quick to change their attacking side, if it's down the left, 3-4 seconds later they could be coming in behind you from the right hand side. So yeah, I think that stability that they've had over a couple of years, knowing that they got promoted, got relegated, got promoted again, everything is almost the same behind the scenes, not just the head coach, but the members of staff. And Stuart Webber who makes a lot of the decisions. So yes, they've earned their right to be in the Premier League, but it's been a difficult start for them.
Yeah, of course, the stats you can see right now, that's their record when they were last in the Premier League. So obviously, same time we were there as well, 2019-2020. They only won 5 games all season, drew 6 of those, lost 27, conceded 75 goals as well. So they shipped a lot of goals, and they've already shipped a few already, haven't they? What have they done so far? 5, 7, 8, 9, 10. They've nearly done like 11 goals already. So good opportunities for us in front of goal this afternoon, because they don't like to keep a clean sheet. What do you think the expectations are for Norwich this season then? Because some people argue they set up to just come up, take the parachute payment, go down again. They don't compete. Especially we saw that last time. It was almost like when they were in there, they just we'll enjoy the rivalry, enjoy the experience, but don't expect much. Do you think we'll be more of that again from them this season?
I think that's their business model. And you could argue that teams 5, 6, 7 years ago had that business model. Now they're established Premier League teams. So it's up to each individual how they run their business. I think they'll be hoping that your first year in the Premier League is the hardest one to stay up. After that, you've got Premier League players and you add in Premier League players. Both Watford and Norwich this season had Championship players, and they're trying to add Premier League players. So you're always trying to improve that squad, and it's very, very difficult to do if you're under difficult financial constraints. So that's always going to be the case, and you're going to hope, whether people like it or not, everybody's going to hope that there's 3 teams worse than you until you can establish yourself, which Watford did prior to relegation in the Premier League. So I think Brentford, Watford, and Norwich will be exactly the same as it is every year with the teams that are newly promoted. But then you look at also how teams like Burnley and Sheffield United did in their first year or two, and if we're honest, are overachieved. Obviously Burnley have that similar thing that Norwich have with the system that they play. They've kept the head coach and the staff, and they just add each year. So there's pros and cons for every way that you go about it, but that's what the supporters and the club will be hoping. They just cling on to a Premier League place this season.
We'll see how Norwich seasons goes this year. Before we move on and talk about our side, let's just hear from Daniel Farke and get his thoughts going into this game today.
I know you touched on it not being a must-win game. Your season isn't going to be judged on the first 4 games that you've had, because you've arguably had the toughest fixtures in the Premier League. But do you think along the way your season is going to be judged on home games, especially games against Watford and those sorts of teams?
In general, I think we have to judge our season after 38 games, and we take each and every point. Even against Man City and Liverpool and Leicester would have liked to win some points and take points in each and every game. And of course, for a newly promoted side, the home games are quite important, and also to be there with a good record, perhaps against the other promoted sides, is definitely helpful. So for that, we are of course highly motivated also to be successful tomorrow. But in general, so all points are valuable, and we want to be competitive in each and every game, and of course also tomorrow.
Well, there we go. The thoughts of Daniel Farke going into that one. Carrow Road, played there a few times. What's it like for our boys going there today?
Yeah, I played there a lot. It's a nice ground. It's not intimidating for opposition players. They're quite a polite crowd. But they have a high expectancy level, so they'll expect their team to retain possession of the ball and get them on the edge of their seats. It's up to Watford to do their job today by going and making sure they leave with a frown on their face, not a smile.
Well, fingers crossed for that one. Of course, we've got the game today, but there's another match on Tuesday, as we've alluded to as well. Carabao Cup action. We will be taking on Stoke City in that one. If you've got tickets for that when you're coming down, we look forward to welcoming you here, of course, to Vicarage Road. But kick off on that one, 7:45. Tickets.watfordfc.com if you want to join us for that one. But of course, stay tuned to all the club's social media channels for all the build-up and reaction to that game as we look to progress to the 4th round of the League Cup. Okay, time now to catch up with one of our new signings here at Watford. Delighted to be able to welcome him to the club. Let's get some thoughts then from our new signing, Ozan Tufan.
Welcome to Watford, Ozan. How have you settled so far? Yerleştim, her şey yolunda. Çok mutluyum buraya geldiğim için, burada bulunduğum için. Umarım istediğim hedeflerimize ulaşırız. Ben de takıma en iyi şekilde yardımcı olurum sahada. O yüzden buraya gelmemde vesile olan herkese çok teşekkür ediyorum. Bütün her şeyim çok iyi, okey. Hiçbir problemim yok. Uyum da sağladım takıma. İnşallah daha iyi olacağını düşünüyorum.
Who has helped you settle in the squad? We saw on your Instagram a picture with Joshua King and Martin Odegaard yesterday. So has Joshua King been helpful with helping you settle in?
Şöyle, ben ilk geldiğimde yalnızdım buraya. Musa yardımcı oluyor. Diğer tüm arkadaşlarım yardımcı oluyor. Joshua yemeğe çıkardı dün. Arkadaşlık etmeye çalışıyor. Yardımcı olmaya çalışıyorlar. Bana destek olmaya çalışıyorlar. O yüzden hepsine çok teşekkür ederim. Bütün takım arkadaşlarım zaten saha içinde bana yardımcı olmaya çalışıyor. Hepsine çok teşekkür ederim. Ama tabii ki Joshua falan daha çok ilgileniyor. Musa, Kuçka, ondan sonra Etebo. Onlarla da Türkiye'de oynadığım için tabii karşılıklı. Onlar da yardımcı oluyorlar bana.
The Turkish fans have shown their support for you on social media since joining Watford, and a lot of people have called you the Turkish Pogba. Do you think that's your play style? Is that the sort of player you are, sort of midfielder you are?
Ya tabii ki Pogba çok büyük bir oyuncu, çok büyük bir karakter. Benim orada attığım, Türkiye'de attığım goller her maçtan sonra işte Pogba'dan daha iyi, işte şundan daha iyi, bundan daha iyi. Çünkü Türkiye'de böyle bir sempatiklik var. Beni de bu şekilde hani ödüllendiriyorlar maçlardan sonra. Tabii ne mutlu yani Pogba gibi bir seviyedeki oyuncuyla aynı seviyede bulundurmaları çok güzel. Ama kendimi tabii ki Pogba da iki yönlü oynuyor. Ben de iki yönlü oynamayı çok seviyorum oyunu. Zaten hedeflerimden, hayallerimden birisi de onlara karşı Premier Lig'de kendimi görmek istiyorum. Çünkü aradaki farkı görmek istiyorum. Başaracağıma da inanıyorum. Bunun cevabını da sahada vermek istiyorum.
Well, great to hear from Ozan then, of course, joining us on a season loan from Fenerbahce. A good addition to the squad?
Very experienced within Turkey, and international experience is exceptional. So it'd be good to see him when he starts playing. He's under a bit of pressure though. If the Turkish fans are comparing him to Paul Pogba, I get compared with Danny Mills and Lee Carsley. That was probably the comparisons end there.
Oh, I love that. Position-wise, a bit of versatility in midfield. He can kind of play as a holding midfielder, or he can kind of play on that right as well. So that's a good addition to the squad, especially for Xisco to have.
We've added a lot in the midfield areas in this window. You know, if you add Etebo and Sissoko, Lusa, Kucka, there's a lot of competition for places in those areas. Added to, you know, club captain Tom Cleverley that plays in those roles. So yeah, I think competition for places is always good for the squad, and they'll all be desperate to play week in, week out.
And obviously we touched a little bit earlier on, obviously the players that you sign when you're in the Premier League and in the Championship. He's got 60 caps already for Turkey as a player, and obviously I think he's predominantly played most of his football in Turkey. I think his whole club career has been in Turkey.
Yeah.
But obviously those international appearances and that experience on that international stage bodes incredibly well when you're coming up to that Premier League level.
It does, and it looks great on paper. I always think that international football bears no relevance to league football, certainly in the Premier League, because of the pace of the games. You know, international football bores me to a certain extent. I don't watch it because of, you know, often there's very little at stake. There's so many friendlies. In the tournaments, the pace is slower because the players are tired from the previous games. So there's certainly no comparisons for me in the Premier League, but the Turkish league's a very, very quick league with a lot of transition in possession. So whilst the Premier League will be a shock, I'm sure he's playing with better players this time around than he's played with before.
I guess what's exciting for him as well as a player, the incentive is that he's here on a season loan deal. There's an opportunity to make it permanent at the end of the season, so it's a real opportunity for him to prove himself and show the manager and the head coach that make sure you make this permanent.
Yeah, I think it's always a risk when you bring somebody into the club that's not played in the league, let alone the country that that you're playing in. But like you say, it's a great opportunity for him to earn that contract to stay in the Premier League, and to do that, he'll have to perform well in the Premier League and impress the Watford supporters.
Certainly will. We'll bring you some team news very shortly ahead of our match, of course, coming up this afternoon. We're at Carrow Road. We're going to be taking on Norwich, trying to pick up that second win of the Premier League season. Now, something we've not been able to do in the last few games, of course, is score goals. Tommy, something you were very adept at doing. You've got yourself on the score sheet plenty of times. Let's just have a little chat on that, because it's pretty much the same tale for both sides today, isn't it? Norwich and, Watford haven't maybe scored as many goals as they could have done, should have done so far this season. Let's just have a little talk about that. Obviously, 3 in that first game, which was a great start, obviously getting that 3 points against Villa as well. But is it fair to say that when you transition from the Championship to the Premier League, it takes a bit of time to just get used to coming up against better defenders?
Exactly that. And naturally, there's less chances created in a Premier League game than there is in the Championship, purely because the ball goes from the 18-yard box to the other in the Championship. That's how it's always been, and that won't change. Premier League is a little bit more sustained possession, and they try to craft chances a little bit more intricately. And perhaps, at times we've been a little bit guilty of that, trying to get the perfect pass into the goal scoring areas, instead of just putting the ball in there and hope that there's somebody in there to tap it in. Creating opportunities to score has been difficult for both teams. Yes, Norwich have played against arguably the stronger teams at this stage, but you've still got to create chances to score goals. And it's one of those where the teams that are often relegated are the ones that haven't scored the goals. You can see with the graphic that we had of Norwich, the amount of goals that they conceded in the Premier League over the last, 50 games or something like that, is the reverse of what they did in the Championship last season. They were very, very good high scorers, and both teams had a good home record. To have that home record in the Premier League is far more difficult than it is in the Championship.
So, first of all then, personally as a striker, how do you adapt? What do you have to do? Do you have to think about your own game? Do you have to maybe look at how you can do things slightly different or be more clever? How do you go about that personally as a striker, taking that onus on yourself?
I think the only difference is you're going to get less chances in the Premier League. You're obviously playing against some of the best players in the world in the Premier League, during my generation and the current generation. So your game is going to be far more difficult. You have to be at full tilt all of the time. And essentially, I wasn't a Premier League player. There was a period in my career where the Championship was too easy for me. Probably my last 50 games for Watford in the Championship, I scored 30 goals. And then going to Birmingham, I scored 15 in 33. So the Championship was easy for me at that stage. In the meantime, there was the Premier League, and I think I scored 2 in 10 before I got injured and was fortunate enough to play towards the back end of the season. But that, for me, tells you that you're going to get less chances, so you need to be a better finisher. And, the old scenario of unless you hit the target, you can't score a goal. And that, for me, is the key to Watford and Norwich's progression in the Premier League, is they've got to create more chances, because statistically you're going to miss chances. You need to create more so you score more.
And is that something, the second part to it, that you work on with the midfielders and the supply that comes to you? Is that something you then have those conversations and you work on the training pitch a lot on?
Yeah, I think it would always be, for me, I'd say to players, don't think you have to put the perfect cross into the box. Just put it in and let me see if I can get on the end of it. Now the game is perhaps less of a crossing and heading goals type of game. It's more intricate than that. It's more about pace and power. But we have that with Ismaïla Sarr, Dennis in the first game. Their link-up play was extraordinary. It was excellent and really gave Tyrone Mings and Matt Targett couldn't deal with the pair of them. We just need to sustain that over a longer period of time. Josh King scored a lot of goals for Bournemouth in the Premier League. Not so much over the last couple of years, but he has scored goals in the Premier League. We just need to get that goal scorer, so we know that if we score in a game, we're confident defensively. Even though we're playing against some of the best strikers in the world, we still have a structure and stability with our defenders and goalkeeper that we can keep the ball out of the net. But we can't go in. We'll lose too many games 1-0 if we don't hit the target when we finish and try and score goals.
Obviously, we'll get that team news very shortly. Once we know that, we'll bring that to you. But looking at how Norwich play, what's going to be our best recipe for success going forward today? Is it going to be trying to go play on the break? Is it going to be trying to that build-up play and working the ball into the box? How do you think we'll get most success today against a team like Norwich?
I think the counter-attack is our best form of attack, and the more we do that and the quicker we do that, we've already mentioned Ismaïla Sarr down the right-hand side, Dennis, Josh King in the previous game. Until we know what the team is, we can't discuss how they'll do it, but it will be based around counter-attack. And the more success you have when you counter-attack, the more confidence you have in possession of the ball. So I think it's almost cyclical with the two. If you're successful with the counter-attack, you look more accomplished in possession and you will create more chances. So for me, front foot, counter-attack, be confident in possession.
And just finally on the kind of strikers and goals point of view, looking at the calibre of player we've got, do you kind of see those goals coming? We've got that quality. You mentioned Josh King, great player, got loads of goals at Bournemouth. Just takes a little bit of time to bed in, but it's not a concern for you that we're going into this season thinking where are the goals coming from. They are there. They'll just take a bit of time to come.
I think there's always that concern because we got promoted last year without a Timo Pukki who gets 26 goals. So you can see we share the goals around the team. There'll be pressure on João Pedro when he's back fit and in the team. Josh King, Emmanuel Dennis, Kucho, and Ismaïla can get on the score sheet. So we've got people who are a threat and can finish. We just need to put the ball into the areas that they can get those goals from.
Okay, right, we've got just under 15 minutes left to go on Hive Live. Still plenty to come. We'll bring you that team news very shortly as well. And we've already heard from the Norwich manager, Daniel Farke. Now time to hear from our head coach, Xisco Munoz.
And just finally from me, you managed to stop Timo Pukki twice last season. How important is it on Saturday, that you managed to stop him from getting chances?
El año pasado hemos parado Pukki 2 veces. ¿Cuánto es importante hacer otra vez este año?
One time more we need. We know what is the potential of him. He's a very good striker, but we need to give what we say. We need to give our start, give our idea, try to give more protagonist with the ball. We try always the different things, and I think it's the game for give one step forward about these things.
There we go. The thoughts of our head coach going into that one. What do you make of those?
Yeah, I think he's very stable in all of his press conferences. He obviously doesn't want to give anything away with his team and the way that he's going to set up. But I think Xisco comes across as a coach that's confident in every game and his players. He genuinely believes in his players' ability, and he works hard with them through the week to get what he wants on a weekend.
Awesome. Okay, Watford fans, the news you've been waiting for. It's the team news. We can bring that to you now this afternoon. So this is how your Watford side are going to line up this afternoon. So a couple of changes from the last game. Ben Foster comes in for Daniel Bachmann. Cleverley and Cathcart come in. Firmina makes his first start of the season. And Tom Cleverley as well makes his 300th league appearance for the Hornets today. Tom Cleverley in there, as we mentioned, with the captain aside today as well. Tommy, what do you make of that team?
Yeah, I think obviously Tom coming back in, he gives that energy and that reference to the other players of how hard you've got to work, and the experience of Ben Foster. I don't think Daniel Bachmann's done an awful lot wrong, but coming in and having that experience, Foster, Cathcart, Cleverley, I think it bodes well, particularly when you go away from home in the Premier League. If we were flying high and full of confidence, then the young players, they take it naturally, but the older players, or more experienced players, should say, coming in, I think that gives just that little bit more stability.
Yeah, massive. We had heard from Xisco, of course, just on those changes as well, and says the changes are to give some extra experience to the team. They are technical decisions. I've said before, we've got 24, 25 players ready to play, so everyone has to show a big level today. You just touched on that word, experience. It's incredibly important. And I say it's a big game today. Get these 3 points today. That's a nice little confidence boost, isn't it? And I think that's what's part of important today. That nice experienced squad. Get the 3 points, get the job done.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is you get the 3 points. To do that, we've got to score goals. So the front end of the team hasn't changed, but the stability behind that has. and hopefully we'll get on the front foot to create opportunities to score. And like you say, a good performance and a good result today could set up a very, very good week.
Was obviously Norwich as well. I think they're going to line up 4-3-3. Pookie starts in there as well, so does Billy Gilmore. They've got some strong players in there today that experience will hopefully contend, because Billy Gilmore, he's got a lot to show for Norwich, hasn't he, this year?
Yeah, he's a really will be a top player. I have no doubt about it. I watched him a lot when he was in Scotland before he went to Chelsea. So I've seen him progress over the last couple of years, and I actually think the Norwich move was good for him, thinking he would be playing week in, week out. It hasn't been like that at Norwich, but he's back in today and he's a threat. And Pookie, like you say, he scored 26 goals in a season. He's got their only goal, I think, this season. So goal scorers are difficult to cope with, and our boys will have to do that today. Yeah,
massive. Ben Foster in goal as well. He's got that Premier League experience. He knows what to deal with that. Firmino comes in, first game of the season. Good for him to show what he's got in his tank today after obviously missing out so far.
I think one of the keys to our success last season was the relationship between Kiko and Ismaïla down the right-hand side. They're both full of energy and enthusiasm, but Kiko wants to get forward as well, which you'd think, a right-back could sit, and at times Cathcart played at right-back and he let Ismaïla Sarr do all attacking. Kiko Femenia won't do that because he's a very, very good crosser of the ball. So I think that's a huge plus. And Ngakia and Cathcart at the start of the season played at right-back, but for me, Kiko Femenia coming in just gives you that little bit more experience, and also that right back that can deliver good crosses to create chances to score.
And a word on Tom Clavey today, 300th league appearance. It's always nice to knock off those milestones. I know when I told you that stat before the show, he's like, I played loads more games than that by the time I was 32. Tommy there, the consummate professional getting all those games in. But that's a great achievement for him, because Tom's played in some great sides with some great players, and he's had to earn every single one of those caps, and he brings some great experience to the side. A good addition, great player to have in our squad.
Yeah, I think and that's the key to it. I remember seeing him play at Watford in the Championship. And he's gone on to have a very successful Premier League career. So his stats, albeit they're half my league appearances, they're in a much, much higher level than mine were. So Tom's played for some top clubs. I worked with him at Aston Villa. I know he is an elite professional and has an incredible desire to succeed. So hopefully that rubs off on the players around him today.
No, certainly. You've seen the team sheet now. How are you feeling going into this one?
I think it's perhaps not as we expected. Perhaps we never expected a change in goal. But the way things are, and obviously with Sierralta getting a red card last week, there had to be a centre back comes in, and that's Cathcart. So I like his stability, organisation, and the ability to win the ball in the air. We need to be fully aware of where Pookie is 100% of the time, because he's a clever striker. So yeah, I think Clevs is a big one for me. He gets on the front foot, and his energy enthuses the players around him. So that's a big thing for me, and I don't think we've really had that since the opening day against Aston Villa. So hopefully that's similar today.
Yeah, no, massively good to have him back in the side. And those players kind of coming together, and I think it's going to be exciting today. I'm looking forward to it. Norwich side, if we can get those points on the board, that'll be massive for the side, and say a big boost going into next week as well. That run of games as well, and we always talk about it, don't we? You kind of think, win today. You don't think about the next game until you finish with this one. But 3 points at the end of the day, that'll be a nice return back here, win it with the thoughts of that Stoke game in the week.
I think players do. They think about the games, and having gone from almost a full season playing Saturday, Tuesday, they'll enjoy the game on Tuesday. No players ever tell you that they're tired, or very, very rare. And if the ones do players tell you that you're tired, they're not there for long. So I think the players will look at it as a week, 3 really good games. Obviously, you've got to start it well. You can't tick the second box and the third box without ticking the first one. But a positive performance and a good result today, whether that be 3 points or 1 point, a positive performance is the most important thing on the back of some disappointing results.
Well, fingers crossed for today. I've sensed we're going to get ourselves 3 points on the board. Of course, remember you can get that live commentary on the website, of course, for all Watford fans. That's going to be live from 2:45 this afternoon. So make sure you get yourself involved with that one. WatfordFC.com, and stay tuned, of course, to the YouTube channel where you're watching this right now, because we're going to have Hive Live Extra coming for you a little bit later on. A chance for you to see all of those match highlights from today's game. Me and Tommy are going to be looking back at the game at full time on that. So keep your eyes posted for Hive Live. Tommy, always good to have you on the build-up with us. Going to give us a score prediction?
2-1 Watford.
2-1 Watford. I like that. Thank you so much for joining us for Hive Live and the build-up for this game today. If you're watching on your way to the game, enjoy it. Make lots of noise for the boys. And hopefully we'll see you a little bit later on for some Hive Live Extra.